Have you ever wondered how the Cullen family was formed? Well, in this video we'll see what's behind each member and how they became vampires. We'll look at everything from the immortal doctor who started it all, to the fashionista with visions of the future. Get ready to discover the secrets, tragedies, and romances that made the Cullens more than just simple vampires. Carlisle Cullen was born in London in 1640. He was the son of an Anglican pastor. His mother died when she gave birth to him. Of course, he wasn't always a vampire. He grew up as a normal child in those times. By the way, that time was somewhat chaotic. There was the English Revolution, which changed many political and social things. In those times, with so much revolution and difference in beliefs, Carlisle's father led a search and hunting group that focused on finding werewolves, witches, and vampires, although many times they hunted innocent people. Over time, as his father grew older, Carlisle took over and proved to be smarter than his own father. Carlisle, he was able to locate a nest, so to speak, of vampires who were hiding in the sewers of London. But this hunting operation went wrong. They killed two of his companions in the process, and although they killed the vampire, Carlisle was bitten and bled out completely. So he was quite afraid of becoming what his father hated so much. So for 3 long days he hid in a basement, which was how long his painful transformation lasted. After his transformation, he tried to end his life in many ways. Carlisle even threw himself from many very high places. He even chose to starve himself and attempted to drown in the sea. After seeing that he couldn't die, the hunger was so intense that he couldn't stand it. But he refused to drink human blood. So, while in the forest, he killed a deer and realized that he could drink animal blood instead of human blood. He began studying at several universities. He studied humanity and medicine for 2 centuries, developed an immunity to drinking human blood, and managed to become a doctor. During his studies in Italy, he met the Volturi clan, with whom he lived for several centuries. Afterwards, he decided to go his own way since the Volturi wanted to make him do so, to drink human blood because it was natural for vampires, while he tried to convince them to feed on animal blood. So he went to New York while working as a doctor. He met Edward, a man dying of the Spanish flu, and Esme, who would later become his wife, following the path of the Esme family. Carlisle's wife was born in 1985. When she was only 16 years old, she fell from a tree and broke her leg. And who was the doctor who treated her? Exactly! None other than Carlisle Cullen himself, who at that time was just a handsome doctor. This was the first time they met. Shortly after this romantic encounter, Carlisle moved away and Esme stayed in Ohio. Although her plan was to go west to become a teacher, her parents told her to stay there and get married. To fulfill her parents' wishes, at 22 she married Charles Evanson, hoping to have a happy mother. But the guy turned out to be a first-class abuser. He mistreated her, he beat her, and when she complained, her parents told her that she had to behave like a good wife. When she found out she was pregnant, she decided to run away to the north with a distant cousin of her family. In 1921, her baby was born, but sadly died a few days later. That left her devastated. She no longer saw any meaning in life, so she tried to take her own life by jumping off a cliff. She survived but had multiple broken bones. They thought she was dead and took her to the morgue, but her heart was still beating. Luckily, not everything was sad. Right in the area, Dr. Cullen was working and he recognized her. He saw in her the cheerful and beautiful young woman he had treated 10 years ago. Carlisle decided to turn her into a vampire because she was dying. Esme and Carlisle got married and became the parents of the Cullens. The first adopted son of the Cullen family is Edward, the quintessential handsome vampire. He was born on June 20, 1901 in Chicago under the name Edward Anthony Mason. That's right, Before being the mysterious boy from Forks, he was an ordinary teenager. He was the son of very well-known lawyers. When Edward was 17 years old, he wanted to enlist in the army and wanted to be a soldier. He had a patriotic, adventurous spirit, but life had other plans. In 1918, the Spanish flu arrived, which unfortunately killed his parents. But Edward's mother, Elizabeth Mason, dying, asked Dr. Cullen to save her son. And right here is a very interesting fact. And it's that Carlisle suspects that Elizabeth knew he was a vampire and that he could save Edward. And that's why she told him to do everything in his power to save her son. Because he could save him, not with traditional medicine, but by turning him into a vampire like himself. That's how Carlisle saves Edward, turning him into his first adopted son of the Cullen family, Edward, after he is transformed. In addition to his senses and physical abilities being heightened, he developed one of the rarest abilities among vampires. Can he read other people's minds? At first, Edward couldn't stand Carlisle's diet of animal blood. That's why he decides to go his own way 10 years after his transformation. Carlisle, being a good father, tells him to do whatever he wants, but if he ever wants to come back, he'll be there. Edward leaves, but not to go sightseeing, he goes to hunt humans. He gets a god complex, deciding who deserves to live or die. As time goes by, he realizes he doesn't want to be a monster and returns to Carlisle, who welcomes him with open arms. Edward adapts to the animal blood diet and returns to the clan. Edward has a very good relationship with the whole family, except for Rosalie, his first adoptive sister. Edward doesn't like the way she is. He sees her as superficial, vain, and too concerned about her beauty. Rosalie, for her part, wanted Edward to notice her, but he didn't pay any attention to her. Carlisle wanted Edward to feel what he feels for Esme, but there was no chemistry or any connection. And after almost 100 years, Edward meets Bella Swan. And well, the rest is what we see in the movies. Now let's go with Alice. She was born as Mary Alice Brandon back in 1901 in Biloxi, Mississippi. Since she was little, she had a very peculiar gift. She dreamed about things that later happened. That's right, Alice had visions of the future. But instead of saying, wow, what magic, what talent she has, her family thought she was crazy and sent her to a psychiatric hospital. While she was in this psychiatric hospital, she met an old vampire who worked there. She also met James, who is a hunter vampire who became obsessed with the smell of her blood. The vampire from the hospital. Seeing the danger, he decided to turn Alice into a vampire when she was 19 years old, so that James couldn't end her life. But afterwards, James finished off the vampire who saved her. In the movies, her curiosity leads her to investigate her past and learn more about her previous life. In New Moon, she discovers that she had a sister named Cynthia and that her niece still lives in Biloxi. She even found a tombstone, and the date of death on the tombstone matches the day she was admitted to the psychiatric hospital. So officially, Alice died the day she was locked up for seeing the future. But not everything is a tragedy for Alice. A few days later, she noticed a boy who looked completely lost and hopeless. This was because in reality, Alice was his hope. We're talking about Jasper, of course. In 1948, they met in a cafe in Philadelphia on a rainy day. She was waiting for him and said, "Did you already know you would come?" And in 1950, they joined the Cullens. Jasper was born in Houston, Texas in the year 1843. A boy with a military spirit who at almost 17 years old was already saying he was 20 so he could join the Confederate Army. And he did it! He rose quickly in the army until he became the youngest major in the Southern Army. But in 1863, during the evacuation of Galveston, his life took a bloody turn. A vampire named Maria. She was looking for someone strong who could fight by her side. When Maria discovered that Jasper had the ability to control the emotions of the people around him, Jasper became the trainer of young vampires, and the one who killed those deemed useless. He spent almost a century in that cycle of violence until an old vampire colleague named Peter convinced him to escape from that place. For a while, he wandered with Peter and another companion named Charlotte, until the one who would become the greatest love of his life appeared, none other than Alice Cullen. She saw him in one of her visions and knew that he was her mate. They met, fell in love, and together they joined the Cullens in 1950. Since then, Jasper has been with Alice, and even though he still struggles with his thirst for human blood, she is his emotional balance. Another family member who doesn't have much information but who is the most recent member is Emmett Cullen. He was born in 1915 in Tennessee, and at the age of 20 in 1935, he went hunting in the mountains. Everything was fine until now. Until he was attacked by a giant bear, which left him on the verge of death. Fortunately, Rosalie Hale, who happened to be nearby, found him. She carried him like a princess and took him straight to Carlisle Cullen, the miracle doctor. To save him, the best option they had was to turn him into a vampire, and according to Emmett, that experience was like being saved by an angel of God. From that moment on, he became one of the strongest members of the family. Rosalie was born on October 10, 1915 in Rochester, New York, into an upper-middle-class family. Her dad worked at a bank, her mom was a housewife, and thanks to their income, they lived with a lot of luxury. According to Rosalie, the Great Depression was just a rumor. She was very beautiful and liked being praised, but one day Rosalie's mother sent her to deliver lunch to her father at work. Also that a wealthy young man would notice her, Royce King II. And of course it worked perfectly because Royce became completely obsessed with Rosalie's beauty. Everything seemed like a fairy tale for this girl. But this relationship was very superficial. More than a relationship, it was a trophy, and she saw him as a ticket to a life of luxury. In April 1933, when Rosalie visited her best friend Vera, she realized that she had a husband who truly loved her. And Rosalie, seeing this, realized that Royce didn't love her and that she didn't love him either. So that night, when she returned home, she found Royce and 4 drunk friends. Then something terrible happened to her. Her so-called beloved called Rosalie over to introduce her to his friends, but he, shameless as he was, let them all abuse her. They humiliated and beat her. They left her completely dying in the street. They walked away laughing while she suffered. Rosalie, wanting to end her life, was found by Carlisle Cullen, who took her to his home and transformed her into a vampire. His intention was for her to be Edward's companion, but that never worked out. What did happen is that Rosalie, seeing that her beauty had intensified, began to regain some of her spirit. The first thing she did after transforming was seek revenge. She hunted them down one by one, leaving Royce for last. She made him suffer while dressed in a wedding gown. So the guy would know exactly who was coming for him. Royce had hired 2 armed bodyguards, but Rosalie took them out without a problem. Then she tortured Royce all night long until she finally finished him off. And the most shocking thing was that she didn't drink the blood of any of them because she didn't want to have any part of them inside her. Since then, Rosalie became part of the Cullens and continues living in this family. Behind that beauty, there's a story of tragedy and horror, and that's how it began. Each Cullen has a story that extends beyond what appears on screen. This family really is a collage of broken past that found refuge in the present. Let us know what you think in the comments.